Maybe you've seen a map like this that shows all of the small cell locations being planned so far in Indianapolis. Or maybe you've seen an orange sign for a public hearing show up in your front yard or near your house. Or it's possible you've even got one of these 47-foot small cell utility towers in your front yard. I want to give you a little bit of information now about what's going on, what you can do about it if you're concerned, and what steps you can take next. So let's start with some background. I can tell you a little bit of the story of what's happened through our experience here in North Willow Farms. So way back in April of 2020, a resident was scanning through the public notices section of the IBJ and came across something mentioning a 47-foot utility communication tower being installed really close to her house. So she contacted me. We started doing some research and discovered that it wasn't just one or two of these in the neighborhood. It was actually 12. There were 12 permits that had been filed here in January, six of which had already been issued by the time we found out about this. So we started digging around and trying to figure out what we could do about this and what was going on, and learned that no one in our neighborhood nor on our HOA was notified because Verizon and other 5G carriers are not required to do that. They are able to just install these without, with minimal permitting oversight, and they can move the process through very quickly. We also found, since that time, we have found public notices for three more sites. So at this stage, we're up to 15 towers planned. That's a big concern for us for a number of reasons, but the biggest reason for us initially is that AT&T and T-Mobile are coming through to do their own deployment. Carriers don't currently have any obligation to collaborate with one another, and so we're starting to be concerned about the situation where we may have 80 or 90 of these towers here in a neighborhood of 393 homes. You can see this is us on a map. You can see there's a pretty even distribution spatially of these towers throughout north, south, east, west. But as I mentioned, we're concerned about this proliferation. While there are only 12 or 15 permits right now, there are a number of spots throughout the neighborhood that don't have any sort of coverage that seem like they would be prime candidates to have more towers coming into those spaces. So that's where we get that number of 25 to 30 is our estimate. The towers are supposed to look like this one, described as sleek, black metal, 47 feet tall with a light at about 30 feet and the small cell equipment at the very top. All of the equipment is supposed to be buried underground next to the tower in that little off-white contraption you see at the bottom of that picture here. And there's street lights added to improve the safety and make the process seem a little more valuable to affected homeowners. But this is the reality of what the tower looks like. There's a light at 30 or at about 30 feet. There's small cell equipment at the very top, but there are a few things that are different. So first of all that equipment that was supposed to be installed at the very bottom of or underground is attached to the bottom of this tower. And also the light that you see here is pointed in an odd direction towards this person's house rather than angled 90 degrees to the right over a street that this goes through. So it's very, very inconsiderate design. And of course, the having a big impact on the aesthetics of our neighborhood are these off-color utility pieces of utility equipment. So everyone wants to know, how did we get here? How did this happen? There is a bit of a story to this. So in 2017, the Indiana state legislature passed a bill known as 213, and what it does is essentially gives carriers carte blanche access to an area of your property known as the right of way. Since this legislation has come out, there has been additional FCC guidance that gives a similar type of authority, so additional cover for this type of work to be done. This is politically difficult for cities because they're the ones who are kind of in the crosshairs of angry homeowners because it looks like they're the ones that issued the permits. But the reality is that this state and federal guidance really takes away almost all oversight in the permitting process by cities. So it puts them in this difficult position where it looks like they're responsible, but really their hands are very tied on what they can do. We've reached out. We thought we would be reasonable homeowners and a reasonable HOA, and so we were able to get through to some contacts at Verizon to negotiate and try to get them to put these towers in different parts of the neighborhood. And to date, they've been unwilling to have those conversations in any meaningful way or any way that would be meaningful to us. So I want to answer a couple questions that people have right off the bat. What is the right of way? Think of it as the 10 feet or so on your property that extends out from the road. This is normally the space where something like a sidewalk or a stop sign or a speed limit sign would go. It is not the utility easement. So this is not where where water and power and utility things like that are placed. This is um, closer to the road from that. People want to know what's coming next, like what's happening now, what's coming next. So as of the recording of this, which is middle of September 2020, the way that the process will work is this. You're going to have, unless you're watching closely, you're not going to know in advance. You're just going to see people start to show up and install fiber optic cable. Big orange cable, they'll do digging and place it underground. After that happens, or I guess as that happens, the installers who do this, they're absolutely going to damage yards. They're absolutely going to damage sidewalks. They've been pretty good in our experience about coming back in a few weeks to clean up and restore things to their original condition. Sometime later, it could be a couple of days, it could be a couple of weeks, it could be a couple of months, but tower construction will begin. Tower construction is going to look like this. It's first going to be a group of people that will come and lay a foundation. Another group will come back later. They'll actually install the pole. And then a final group will come back after that and install the equipment that you saw at the bottom of the tower. They may need to do some additional work to run electrical and things of that nature. And um, the whole process will kind of work like that. I urge people not to, despite the temptation, do not attempt to block the workers. They're there with as long as they're there with a valid permit, they have the legal right to work in the or in the right of way. If you interfere with them, then you change it from a situation where they're doing something that's, doesn't maybe look great. The optics of it aren't good, but if you try to block their work, then it actually changes the situation to, you are the one who's committing a crime. So I recommend asking them for a permit, check the permit number, check the expiration date. Make sure that they have a valid permit, make sure that that permit has not expired in the past. If either of those things are the case, they don't have a permit or they don't have or the permit has expired, you're at that time free to call the police and make a bit more of a stink about it. So if you live in Indianapolis, there's actually some good news here. The fact that at the very beginning of the presentation, I showed a picture of an orange sign. Before, these permits were getting rubber stamped, and then at some point over the summer, the city introduced a new process where carriers that want to work in the right of way inside of neighborhoods have to go through a variance process in order to do that. Now, variance process means that by default, the city is saying no, that land can't be used for that purpose in those areas. And so carriers now have to come back and request a special use of the property. So this is a variance hearing. It's done with a board of people who are citizens just like us, who hear these cases and consider them on their merits and make a decision about whether or not to allow carriers to use use your property in that way. This is a huge amount of progress from where we were before. This is a chance. So before you had no chance to have your voice heard. In fact, you might not even know about it until you actually have a tower in your yard. The city's now come in and intervened in the process and is stopping it, giving you your constitutional right to have your voice heard about things that are happening on on your property. At the state legislative level, there's some work underway to fix some of the issues in House Bill 213. I have found that as I've spoken with legislators, especially after these things have come in and they've seen pictures and understanding how the process is working, this is not what people expected when they voted for this bill. The intent of the law was to allow carriers to work in thoroughfares, business districts, and rural areas to get a rapid deployment throughout the state, not expecting that these were going to go in people's front yards and inside of neighborhoods. So I think there's a wide consensus that there's an issue that this is not how good governance should work. And I think that we'll hopefully see some movement at the legislative level to clean this up. I highly recommend you, if you're concerned about this, to be engaged, to contact your state senator, contact your state representative, let them know about what's going on, share this video with them, make sure that people are just seeing it and attuned to what's going on. And I think we can trust our government officials to do the right thing, I hope. I mentioned contacting state and local representative. I highly recommend that you contact your HOA, contact your city councilor, and let them know, ask them questions about what's going on, help get them involved in the process. They're all here to work for you, and a lot of times the reasons people aren't working for you is just they have so many things going on, they don't know about what's happening. So make sure that make sure that the people that represent you know what's going on. You can I've created a map that we keep up to date with all of the permit locations in Indianapolis. You can keep up with that with this URL that's right here on the screen. You can also share this video out with your network. It's been hugely successful. Other videos that we've made, it's really done a good job of getting the word out at all levels. I mean, getting the word out to people within city government, to state officials, to other just concerned residents like yourself. And honestly, it gets the information out to people that aren't concerned. There are some people that are totally happy with this going forward as planned, and it's helpful for all of us to be educated on what's going on so that our conversations are at the appropriate level and about the appropriate things. And then, of course, be on the lookout for these orange public hearing signs that are showing up around the city. If you see those in your area, contact the email address that's on there and get involved in the process and show up to that hearing and have your voice heard. Take advantage of this opportunity that's been given to us. If you're an HOA involved with an HOA or an HOA president like I am, the number one thing I recommend to you is communicate with your residents. People hate surprises like this, and it's very empowering to find out in advance before something happens. It and being able to take action and do it. And so really helpful for your residents to let them know about what's going on and again communicate factually about the situation. Most of your residents, if you're like our neighborhood, 80 to 90% of our residents are opposed to not necessarily towers going in, not necessarily to 5G in the neighborhood, but very much opposed to the process. So I think that you'll find similar things in your neighborhood. There are going to be some people who are excited about 5G and who want the improved internet service, but for the most part, the people that I've spoken with are not necessarily in favor of towers being put in their neighbor's front yard or their own front yard. So if you fit into that category, if you fit into the category of wanting to stop the process, wanting to get influence over the process, wanting to have 5G in the area, but not wanting things in the front yards and having things be, having this deployment done in a more thoughtful way. If you fit into any of those categories, you have to oppose these variance requests. There's no other way to cause carriers to have to work with you and negotiate with you without stopping their request for permits. You have to oppose these. You have to be successful in dealing with these with these requests. I am quite certain that your city councilor will support you in that effort. Every counselor I've spoken with is excited to come and act on behalf of homeowners association and homeowners. And if I can be a resource to you in any way, answering questions for you, speaking with your homeowners association, speaking with your residents, just answering questions that you have, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm president at northwellowfarms.org.